Welcome to the Command Show.
Science 5, Engine 101.
With Anthony Kastros and Ed Hadfield.
Truck 106, Science 7 show. You're responding on the MPT for dispatch they're asking for you.
Let's start the show.
Hey everybody, it's Anthony Kastros coming to you live at 4:30, 16:30 hours Pacific Standard Time on Monday, April 6th, 2020. We have a lot to talk about tonight, and I thank you all for participating either live or listening to the show later on from the comfort of your firehouse or your home or wherever you are. Many of you hopefully saw the fact that we have one of my dear friends and colleagues, none other than Frank Viscuso, here with us tonight, and he's going to be talking with us tonight about all kinds of things. And he and I, as most of you know, have taken our classes, are not short on opinions, and you won't be disappointed tonight. Before I start, though, I want to start by talking about one thing we always start every single Command Show episode on, and that is the NIOSH 5. Every one of you who's heard this show before knows I like to start with the NIOSH 5. It's the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, top 5 reasons we are getting in trouble. And you could say it's line of duty death, but that's kind of short-sighted. In reality, it's line of duty death, but it's also near misses. It's also close calls and also injuries to firefighters and lost civilians alike. Basically, if you have dysfunctional fireground operations, the NIOSH 5 is alive and well. So with that, let's go over what they are briefly because we go over it every time. Number one is risk assessment. If we have poor risk assessment or lack of size up on the fireground, whether it's initially or ongoing, we don't know what we have, then we're going to get in trouble. How many of you have read a NIOSH line of duty death report that started out with, once upon a time there was a fire department. They went to a fire, they didn't know what they had, and something bad happened. That's pretty much the template for all line of duty deaths and or near misses. So inadequate risk assessment is a big piece. Next is communications, bad communications, inadequate communications. We all cite communications as a problem on the fireground. We all know it comes from everything from SCBAs to training to background to open mics to human error to noisy engines to SCBAs to people who are talking who don't need to be talking. Next is inadequate or inaccurate accountability, not knowing your job or your boss or the troops, kind of freelancing, or the IC not knowing where everybody is or accounting for where they are. And the next one, which is near and dear to my heart, is just command itself, ICS, not having a robust enough incident command structure. And that's where we preach and teach incident command systems using ICS, using the incident command system on everything, not just when you're drowning. And that's something we're going to get into tonight with Frank. I think we're going to have a great dialogue with that. And then finally, the last piece of the pie, if you do not have SOGs or your SOGs are archaic, antiquated, or not followed, you're asking for trouble. So those are the top 5 on the NIOSH 5. That is really the basis and foundation for a lot of our curriculum and why we teach command the way we do. And so with that, I would like to introduce somebody who needs no introduction, my dear friend Frank Viscuso. He is the author of several best-selling books, just a few of them, Step Up and Lead. Many of you know that book, Step Up Your Teamwork, Common Valor, and many, many others. He is a very sought-after speaker, and he writes a lot of articles, and he teaches all around the world. And Frank and I have become dear friends over the years. We share faith in God. We share a love of family, and we share a love of this job. We also recently share retirement, and that's something that we kind of help each other transition into. So with that, Frankie, thanks for joining us, brother. I'm going to let you say hello, and then while you're talking, I'm going to bring in another caller who just joined us.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here, and you know that. First of all, if people only knew how often you and I just pick up the phone, call each other, and have the type of conversation we're about to have right now, just with you and me on the phone, I think they'd really appreciate our commitment and what we love about the fire service, the camaraderie, and everything else. And I want to build on what you were just talking about with the NIOSH 5, but I know you have a caller right now, so I'll just wait for the right time because I have some topics I want to talk about on that.
Okay, we will cover that. Who's our caller from the 425 area code? Hello?
I just
Hello?
Hello?
Hello? Welcome
Hi
to the
there.
Command Show. Who's this?
Scott Depew from Eastside Fire and Rescue.
Hey, how are you, brother?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. Do you want to just listen? Do you want to participate tonight? We have lots to talk about.
Well, I'm on shift. I'm at the station. So I'm going to listen. If I can participate, that's great. We're as with everybody, we're dealing with a whole bunch of different problems today. So, but I finally have a chance to listen to one. So, I've got some senior firefighters here who wanted to listen. So, we're itching to hear what's going on.
Well, I appreciate that, brother. Hey, say your name and rank again so everybody else can hear you that's listening out there.
I'm sorry, Scott Depew, I'm a lieutenant with Eastside Fire and Rescue in King County, Washington.
Thanks, brother. And we have one more caller that just joined in who looks like it might be somebody close to here, local. I'm going to bring them in, then we'll start. We have a caller in from the 831 area code, 713 prefix. Who's that? Hello? Caller with 831 area code?
Yes. Hey, Chief Kastros. It's Jason Nee with Central Fire in Santa Cruz.
Hey, Jason. Thanks for joining us, brother. Great to have you aboard. So we got four of us, and even with just me, because I'm such a blabbermouth, there's lots to talk about. I want to get on my monologues. But we have Frank Viscuso, and we have two gentlemen from one from Santa Cruz here in California, and Jason and Scott from up on East Side Fire Rescue in Washington. So I'm going to get it back to Frank. He was kind of wanting to talk about some of this NIOSH stuff, and let's just let Frank take it from here.
Yeah, and what's very interesting is I remember the very first time several years ago when I called in on one of these radio programs because it said, hey, call in to listen. I dialed in, and people started asking who was on the phone, and I remember thinking, wait, I didn't want to be, I just want to listen. So if anybody just dialed in expecting just to listen, and you're wondering why they're calling on you, I've been there. I get it. You were talking about the NIOSH 5, and I just want to touch on this. Is something I talk about in my classes is the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation had come out with a list of contributing factors to firefighter fatalities. And on that list, they listed 5 things: culture and peer pressure, complacency, insufficient safety policies and protocols, situational awareness or curiosity, and the 5th one, which I love talking about, which is the acceptance of accidental success and unsafe behaviors, which is basically, Anthony, you know what this is as good as anybody would, but this is like us saying that we're willingly accepting a lower standard of performance of ourselves or our equipment or our team, even though we know it's not the best thing or the right thing, and this happens every single day in every single profession, especially ours. And people need to really be way more aware of saying, if we know we can do it better, let's do it better.
Right.
So I just wanted to touch on that because I talk about that quite often, and because we know what the causes are, but it's the contributing factors that lead to the causes is what people really need to understand better.
Well, what you're talking about, Frank, is leadership and cultural and human dynamics before the fire ever comes in, And what the NIOSH 5 deals with is actual operational causes on the fire ground and failures in command. But what you're talking about precedes that, and that is a failure in leadership, a failure in culture, and bad habits that kind of that are predictable issues that can lead to the NIOSH 5 coming to fruition.
Yeah, exactly.
So with that as kind of a backdrop, I know that one of the things that Frank and I wanted to talk about to kick off tonight's show is the elephant in the room, COVID-19. By now everybody listening, certainly the 4 of us on the show, have either friends who've gotten sick on the job, maybe some who even passed, who died because of this, friends, family, friends of friends. It's everywhere now, and of course everyone's freaking out today because now it's, being passed from animals to humans and back and forth and all this. And my wife literally told me, don't let the dog lick you anymore and all this kind of stuff. And we've been in quarantine. As far as I know, the dog hasn't snuck out at night and gone anywhere where she's going to get COVID-19. But that being the case, one of the things that Frank and I were talking about is that this is kind of the next 9/11. I personally responded to New York on 9/11, lost friends like I know Frank did, like many of us did. Spent 11 days on ground zero, went out there that day and spent 11 days on the pile. And that was the biggest thing I've noticed for me is that during those 11 days, we were in a vacuum. We were in a laboratory in New York, and we didn't know what was going on outside the world, outside of downtown. And then once we came home, that's when we realized how much that impacted the rest of the country. This is different. The people that were directly impacted by 9/11 is much different than this. This is pandemic is global, and it's impacting everybody. But there are certainly similarities. And so what I want to talk about tonight is kind of the similarities, the differences, and talk to our friends from East Side and from Central and see what they think. But Frank, why don't you share with everybody kind of some of the things that we were talking about earlier today? Get ready for this.
Well, first I'll tell you this. I had seen somebody post on social media yesterday. They asked the question, do you think that the country is overreacting with COVID-19? And the majority of the people that answered beneath that said yes. Well, they're not. And first of all, let me just share a couple things with you. We're in one of the hotbeds right now here in New Jersey. And my next-door neighbor is one of my best buddies. He's a police officer. And he has been on a respirator. He's younger than me. He's in his early 40s. Been on a respirator for now 3 weeks. From what I understand yesterday, they just took him off the ECMO machine. And, man, I'm telling you, it's hard for me to even talk about it because, I love him. I actually texted him today saying, I can't wait for the day that you return my text. And his doctor today, talking to his wife, said the thing that people don't understand is if this was a baseball game, we're only in the second inning. And I'm not an alarmist at all, and I'm certainly not a guy that points out the worst of things, but I do want to share a couple things with people because I called my accountant today to ask him a question. He returned my call and said, yeah, we closed the office. Everybody's got it. I spoke to a deputy chief today about an hour ago. He says, yeah, I have it, and my wife had it, and my son has it. We're 2 weeks over right now, and I just spoke to another firefighter. He said, and he just tested positive. He's got no symptoms. He says, my wife, she lost her taste buds, and she lost her sense of smell. He says, for me, I just had a fever for a little bit. Everybody's at a different level with this thing, but we have 337,000 cases in the U.S. That's up 25,000 just from yesterday. And I think it's now 1,330,000 worldwide, up 130,000 from yesterday. I'm in New Jersey. We have 41,000 cases, 1,000 deaths. But when people throw out some of these numbers, they're like, well, compare that to this, compare that to that. Wait, this is still happening. So people need to understand that it's serious. And for people that are out there, and again, I'm not an alarmist, I just want people to really make great decisions right now because we are the front line. And you know what? We're not even a front line anymore. Now every person is front line to this right now. Because I have a friend whose daughter, they're out in Florida, and she just came to volunteered to come work in a hospital in Brooklyn. And her mom, who's also a nurse, had just posted something on social media saying it's worse than we thought from where they came from. She said there's young, healthy patients that are very sick and dying, and they have refrigerated trucks outside to keep the bodies. So nobody out there should be thinking, well, this thing is really nothing. Here's what I want to suggest, and I don't know enough about this to really act like I'm a doctor. But what I'm going to tell you is this. Act like you already have it. when you walk around, protect yourself, wear a mask, but don't think the mask will prevent you from getting it. What the mask is going to do is would prevent you from passing it on, but hygiene, social distancing, staying home, washing your hands the way they teach you and not touching everything, all these things we have to do until this thing passes. And when it does pass and how it passes, I don't know. I hope it's sooner than later. But I know that we just have to understand that we're dealing with a different animal right here. And knowledge is power. And I really don't want people that are out there to get overly alarmed, but I certainly don't want anyone to think that we're overreacting. What I hope is we get to a point, because I know we've been social distancing now for about a month, 3 weeks now. I mean, I came back from, I think it was California, was my last presentation. Everything else has been canceled. And we're just trying to do our best to help the first responders now, Anthony, by staying away and not continuing to spread it. So I didn't mean to get long-winded there, but if we're going to have a conversation about something as serious, I think we need to start. Yeah, we need to start with painting it in the right light, which is, yes, this is something to be serious about. And my buddy next door, by the way, he's a police officer. Here's how he got it from what they know. He was changing a car seat, as police officers often do. And then he got sick. And then about 2 weeks later, maybe not even that long, the woman whose car they were changing a car seat in, apparently she got tested, found out she had it, and called the police station and said, I just want you to know that I tested positive. And that's how he found out. So, yeah, we have to take care of ourselves. We have to be smart, and we have to be aware and understand that this is not something to take lightly. Because when I drive around town to go for essential things, I can't believe the amount of people that I see that are just still traveling in packs, taking this thing lightly, not realizing what we're dealing with.
Right, exactly. Now, you're coming at us from the East Coast. I'm coming at everybody from the West Coast, along with these other two fellows. And right now, the confirmed cases in California are at 16,000 roughly, and pushing 400 deaths. And the thing is it's what I'm looking at. And the thing that alarms me is the rate of how exponentially it's growing. And we're not at the apex yet. We're not at the peak yet. And a lot of people have called this, it's a world, it's like World War III, literally. The whole world is involved. It's a war. The enemy is invisible. But like a lot of wars in the past, I think about World War II, and, some of the occupied countries that were being occupied by the Nazis, they had to fight. Everybody had to fight. Everybody was involved. The resistance in France, for example, there were spies, there were people that were communicating with the military, and they were doing it through code, through radio transmissions, and it took everybody. It was an all-hands effort, not just the military. And this is unprecedented, and it's now we can go back and say that there was the Spanish plague 100 years ago, and 200 years ago I think it was the something else. If it was a black plague or something else, but every 100 years, you can Google anything you want and find that this is, in a sense, it's nothing new, but it's definitely new to this generation. And to your point, it's amazing to me how many people are not taking this seriously. You don't have to be paranoid. You don't have to be alarmist. You don't have to freak out. A lot of us are probably having to keep our families calm about it. I'm sure I'd like to hear from our friends on the phone with us who are still actively on the job. How are they dealing with coming back to the station? How are you guys dealing with going home from work after 24 or 48 hours? How are you guys dealing with it? We'll start with Scott, because you're on duty. How are you and your crew handling the calls? What's your department doing for PPE and procedures? How are your families handling it? Anything you want to talk about?
Well, thanks, Chief. Appreciate the opportunity, and we're at such a juncture. Well, the first thing I'll tell you is it's very stressful. On the one side of it, there's three big factors. It's stressful. We don't want to make a mistake. I don't want to put lives at risk by making a mistake. We started deploying what's called a scout model, where if we have a lot of high risk occupancies in King County, as you guys well know, we're sending one person in full MEG in to basically do a recon and report back, and then if that person is showing signs, then we're trying to limit the exposures, but we're also trying to limit the amount of equipment we're using, and that's very unsettling. I mean, as you guys know, one thing that we've always had, no matter what the problem is, we've always had the swarm mentality, right? We've always had 3 people, 4 people, 10 people, 15 people behind us, with us, and no matter what the problem was, we could take care of it. And now either myself or I've got to send somebody into a building by themselves to figure out what's going on, and it's just a very different way of doing business, and getting used to it, and we're starting to get used to it a little bit.
That is a major paradigm shift, like you said, from what we as firefighters are used to.
And Anthony, I spoke to another captain just yesterday who they do the exact same thing. I imagine that's what most of the country is doing right now. And last time Anthony and I spoke, when we were just speaking about commanded structure fires, and I guess we'll get into this a little bit later, but we were talking about peer support, and it's a whole different ballgame now when you're saying, you all stay here, I'm going to go in and see what we're dealing with. And bring in limited supplies, like you said, because we're trying to keep everything that we can for when we need it. This is it's the new normal, as Anthony would say.
What are you guys doing in Central, in Santa Cruz?
Yeah, so thank you, and Frank, I am really terribly sorry to hear about your neighbor. That is a terrible story. I hope he turns it around and gets well soon.
Thank you.
Like Washington in California, we're doing a lot of the same stuff, gearing people up, sending one person in at a time. The rest of the crew stays outside in a similar set of garb, but not as much as the PPE as the person going inside. And then really the other thing we're trying to do is really try to ask questions, have them come outside to meet us outside from the dispatch center, and when we can try to, it was described to us as kind of like in construction. You measure twice and you cut once. You get one shot to get inside of this person's house and to make a good decision and have all your PPE on and appropriate. You get one shot every single time you go in there. So we're trying to get as much information as we can before we start interacting with these people. And it need be, the patient care gets delayed sometimes because of it. It's a total paradigm shift in what we're accustomed to doing, running in there with 3 or 4 people, like they said, and getting stuff done. And it's totally changed the way we approach everybody. And like you said, Chief Kastros, the idea about how this is different than 9/11, but this is everywhere, and everybody's has to do these things to keep themselves healthy.
And I think would you agree to get through this? I mean, not just to keep individuals healthy, but to beat it. Everybody has to have their hands on the rope to beat this thing. To tug in the right direction and together. And I think, I know for me personally, I mean, I'll admit it. At first, I thought this was, and when I say first, I mean a month to 2 months ago. I thought it was a little bit of an overreaction, but I'll tell you this: my wife and I were supposed to take our girls to Disney World in January. And we chose not to. We actually didn't because we just weren't sure. Actually, forgive me, it was like the first week of February. It was the week after the Super Bowl. So it was like the first week of February, give or take. We were literally going to fly on Super Bowl Sunday out of San Francisco Airport to Disney World. And, everybody, the Super Bowl was in Florida. And where does everybody go after the Super Bowl? Disneyland, right? They were going to go to Disney World. So we just thought to ourselves, you know what? We just don't want to take a chance. So we didn't. And thank God we didn't, because who knows what, if we would have been exposed. But now the whole world is doing it. And it's truly going to be an all hands on deck effort. And for me personally, I've got my N95 masks. I got my nitrile gloves. I'm masking up and gloving up when I go out to even for 10 minutes to get a jug of milk at the store. I mean, obviously, I'm trying to be efficient, maybe go out twice a week, and my rest of my family, my wife and 2 girls, they just stay home. I decon everything when I get home. I've got bleach solutions and alcohol solutions and all that stuff to decon everything. Before I bring the mail in, I take it out of the outer envelope and only bring what's inside the contents of the envelope into the house. And I'm in a very, very low frequency, low exposure area because I'm in Monterey County in California, and I think right now we're at about 70 to 80 cases in the whole county, which is a far cry from other parts of the country. But I think, let's talk a little bit about what is this going to mean to the country from a leadership standpoint, from a human element from here on out. For example, shortly after 9/11, the moment we landed at Travis Air Force Base near San Francisco when we came back after 11 days at Ground Zero. And the first thing we noticed was it was probably 1 a.m, and we noticed because we were escorted. It was about a 45-minute drive back to our home base. For that entire drive at 1 a.m, we were escorted by every fire engine and truck and CHP vehicle that every jurisdiction we passed through. They came alongside us. Every overpass had flags. It was truly overwhelming. There was a sense of patriotism throughout the country that everybody speaks of. I know I felt it and experienced it. That was so prevalent in the weeks after 9/11. But look at how far we've come in 19 years since then, and look at how divided the country's been. Do you guys think that hopefully we'll be a more unified nation because of this? I'll start with Frank.
I hope so, and I'm going to tell you this. What you just described is, when people talk about pet peeves, that's mine. My pet peeve is it just absolutely disgusts me that it takes a tragedy to pull people together.
Yeah.
It should not be that way. Why does it have to take, buildings to fall down in New York for the Boston Red Sox fans to pay respect to the Yankees? And believe me, I don't mean to. I just said that because I'm from New York and I know that they did show a tremendous amount of respect, just like the Yankees fans did when Boston came here after the Boston bombings. But it shouldn't have to take that for that to happen.
Right.
It shouldn't have to take that. It has to be. We just talked about this a minute ago. You have one shot now to make a good decision, and the lives of. Not the lives, but the health of 4 of your members is going to be dependent on you making a great decision as to what are we dealing with. Can you come in? How do we protect ourselves? How do we decon from this? Was I exposed? Are you now going to be exposed? Is everybody else going to be exposed? So there's no room for error right there, and so it has to be, like you mentioned, all hands on deck. Everybody's got one common goal, but I hope that we just don't forget this feeling, and we are less likely to just kind of have friction and conflict with each other over trivial things that don't mean anything. So, that's just my initial thoughts when you're talking about what you were saying post 9/11. Post 9/11, I loved what happened to America. I was over there, 2 or 3 days later myself, Anthony, and I saw the strength of America standing on top of what were the towers, and it was the steel workers, and it was the police officers, the firefighters, the EMTs, the volunteers, and I saw how strong we are, and I remember coming back talking to my parents saying, if you saw what I saw over there, you'd know we're okay.
Yeah,
but it shouldn't take
we're
a
going to be okay
for us to remember that. We're going to be okay, no doubt.
Yeah, we are going to be okay, but the question is, God willing, will we be better off? And that's what I hope for. I hope it'll stick, and I think the country's needed this, and the world has needed something to bring us together. It's terrible that it has to be tragedy. But we'll either be stronger for it, but will it be sustained? And that's, I think, the big question. We just had an additional caller, my dear friend Paul Urbano from Anchorage, Alaska Fire. Paul just joined us. Thanks for calling in, brother. Scott, what are your thoughts on what we're talking about?
Well, a discussion that I had today with a fellow member is, a little bit of the work. Well, first of all, the divisiveness is really difficult to deal with. When 9/11 happened, it was all hands on deck and everybody was ready to work. And, the bickering is extremely hard. But, going back to the scout model, I think that there's a little bit of a worry that, some people that run fire departments are looking at this and going, oh, hey, this is a new way that we can do stuff. And, as with everything, there's a attack on staffing levels and, sending, remember the joke a few years ago about, hey, let's send one person out in a Prius and we'll see if we need to send a fire engine type of thing. Well, we're kind of doing that in a certain respect, and are people going to look at this and go, well, this is a new way that we can provide service to the people, and it's not the best way, it's not the safest way, and so that's a big worry for us that someone's going to see it. This is a new way to deploy staffing to the public, and that's
a good point.
The best use.
It's a real good point. It's a valid concern. I think that's where the leadership has to come in and say, listen, in our profession, it's about the ability to adapt. You have to have the ability to adapt. Because we're fighting, and I don't just mean with COVID, even just a structure fire hits us any time of the day and night, unknown size and intensity, can maneuver rapidly. We have to change, adapt, and figure it out as we go. But when it comes back to how we were doing things before with our fires and our hazmats and what we're still doing now, that's the funny thing. We're talking about COVID, but the reality is it's not like anybody stopped fighting fires. All of this is still, and everything's still happening, and they're out there training and doing what they have to do, and the leadership has to come in and say, look, this is the way we have to do it. It is about peer support. It is about teamwork and working together, and it's not about the scout model. This is, and I get that, but that's not what we want to end up doing from this point forward on the other duties that we have been doing for the past 100, 200 years.
What are your thoughts on this, Jason?
Well, a lot of the same ones, and kind of like what Frank is talking about, that we still have to go do our job. And the thing that worries the people in California for sure, and Washington to some degree as well, but is what do we do? What changes when fire season comes? What is base camp going to look like with COVID? What is where do you evacuate?
Yep.
Say you have Paradise again. Where are you going to evacuate people to? Like, you can't send them to a gymnasium or a convention center or whatever. And then secondarily, for me, is kind of the economic thing, and kind of like what the folks in Washington were talking about. When we look at the future of this economic downturn and what that's going to do with people with public pensions and benefits and those types of things. Like, I remember post 9/11, and everybody was driving around, and they see a fire engine, they give you thumbs up. For people that were 3,000 miles away, who lost their lives, unfortunately. But they were giving us thumbs up here in California. In 2008, after the economic downturn, and the public servants are still getting pensions and benefits and those things, and other people are struggling to put food on the table and pay their mortgage or pay their rent or whatever. That's coming, I think, for us. Like, right now, people are thumbs up when you go because they've got whatever issue that they've got, a vehicle accident or a structure fire or whatever. But that, I think, is going to rebound and come our way in the not too distant future, unfortunately.
We've dealt with this a couple times. We dealt with this with, when we had the financial turnaround with the mortgage and the housing crisis. And like you said, with 9/11, and here in New Jersey, when Chris Christie became the governor, he was talking consistently and all over the place about pension benefit reform, and we felt like we went from where people really respected us post 9/11 to all of a sudden, why do you have this and I don't have this? And families were fighting, brothers were fighting against with each other because one's a firefighter or a police officer or a teacher, and another one used to work on Wall Street and lost their job. And so I get that. That's a valid fear. But see, I like to believe that, and we did rebound from that. I like to believe that if you just continue to provide great service and continue to do what we do, at the end of the day, there's always going to be those reminders. We need them. Like look what's happening with our healthcare workers right now. I mean, they're getting their due right now, where everybody knows how valuable we always did, but now they know that we know how valuable they are. But hopefully we don't forget that. And hopefully people never forget that about police officers and firefighters, because we are the first line of defense, and it's not just the first responders. We're the first ones to show up, the ones that have to make some very difficult decisions. And normally, if somebody's not dealing with a tragedy right now and then, maybe they're not thinking about you, and maybe they are thinking, hey, I'm suffering, why should you get a pension? But then that thing happens, something like this, or that structure fire that happens in your neighborhood where people go, man, you know what? These people, they're special. And when I go to Texas, Anthony, you've been to Texas quite often. When I go to Texas, man, when I walk around with some of the firefighters in Texas in uniform, like for lunchtime after a class, they're all dressed in uniform. I am blown away by the amount of support they get from the public.
Yeah.
I've never seen,
sure.
For where I come from in New Jersey, I've never seen anything like it. And I would like to strive for that everywhere throughout the country. And I think it's because they're really, really good at customer service. And the culture there is we really respect our first responders. We really respect the men and women that served our armed forces. And
Agreed.
And the front line, right? So we have to just keep doing what we're doing, and we can't worry about all of that. And I'm sorry to take up so much time, but I've been through this, is what I'm trying to say. And on the other end, people always seem to remember and respect you for this job. We are one of the most respected professions in the world, and I don't think that's ever going to change.
I think this is definitely going to be an opportunity for the healthcare workers in particular to get the support and be front and center.
Yeah.
But there's something that Jason said that really struck me, and this is something I've been talking to some of my colleagues about in California. Is these things? It's like a remodel of your house. It's always going to take longer and be more expensive, and this thing is going to go longer than we think, and it's going to be more involved. And out here in California, we have a very, very predictable event coming called fire season that Jason alluded to, and that's very real. And what's been happening in California is it's only gotten worse by the year, whether it's the Camp Fire in Paradise or the fires in Central California. We are wiping out entire communities now, and the number of fatalities, getting close to the 100 mark per fire is unprecedented. And when you start to combine that with the effects of COVID, if it's still anywhere near this, when we start talking about sheltering in place versus sheltering people in a gymnasium at a church, and also, you're going to be having resources that are already strained, whether it's because firefighters are sick and not reporting for duty, or otherwise. Same with law enforcement. It's just not a fire problem; it's everybody's problem when an entire town is burning down. There's a lot to be thinking about ahead of the time, and California, we like to consider ourselves, and we are very much an all risk state because we deal with it every single year. But this is unprecedented, and we're going into it kind of handicapped, if you will. Now, typically, fire season, the real big stuff doesn't happen until later in the season, almost into the fall. And hopefully that'll be the case. That we'll have a bit of a reprieve through June and July and August, and maybe in September and October it'll kick in like it often does. But that's a huge issue that Jason brought up. And how do you envision that, Jason? I mean, talk about some of the things you mentioned just off the cuff about, how do you like, for example, when I was in logistics, when I was on overhead, and we had to fight Camp 5,000 firefighters who were eating together, sleeping together, showering together. There was no social distancing in fire camp, and there's not. And so, Jason, what are some of the other thoughts that are rattling around your brain when you're thinking about this?
Yeah, well, the first thing that comes to mind are those sleeper trailers, and if you haven't experienced one of those, it's like climbing into an air-conditioned coffin 3 levels high with your buddy who's like 6 or 8 inches away from you, and that's where you spend your half of your day off. And so that's the first thing that comes to mind, and it's just like, given the potency of what I imagine COVID-19 seems to be providing, I can't foresee how, number one, what is the military doing right now for they have to have the same precautions. They have the same volumes of people that they have to have in their locations. And so obviously they're dealing with some of the same stuff. But kind of like you said, Chief Kastros, from the beginning is, you have to assume that you have it and that the precautions that you're taking are going to help prevent somebody else from getting it as well. I can't quite get my mind around it, and I'm kind of seeing it in the local firehouse as well. Like, people kind of sequester themselves in their own space, just for their own self-preservation and keeping them and their families healthy.
Yeah, for sure. What about you, Captain Urbano? Captain Urbano, Paul Urbano, is a shift safety officer for Anchorage, Alaska Fire Department. He's a senior captain, been up there forever, been a truck captain forever. How are you doing up there? How's Anchorage doing? Do you even have any cases up there? I haven't been following that region.
Yes, I don't have the numbers with me, but we do have cases throughout Alaska and in Anchorage. And the guys seem to be adapting pretty well out there on the line.
Okay, good.
Hey, can I just take 1 second just to say to say hi to Paul? Paul, it's Frank. I haven't seen you in a while, but I'm glad you're on the call. It's good to have you here.
Hey, Chief, thanks. It's good to hear you too.
Well, hey, we're gonna. I just want to say a couple more things about this unprecedented event that we're all living through. Our kids are living through. One of the things that I think that we need to take a moment and reflect upon is the blessings that come into these types of situations. Obviously, many people are suffering in this season economically. They have families who are sick. They're sick. They have, heaven forbid, loved ones who have passed. But we also have to realize that there are blessings that come from this season that's going to pass. And I'm finding that just for me alone, I'm here with my wife and my 2 girls, and we're spending obviously a ton of time at home with our girls. We're spending a ton of time homeschooling them and spending a lot of quality time at our house in the backyard. And I think that I'm hearing that more and more, and you're seeing that on social media more and more, that people are kind of rediscovering quality time at home instead of being distracted all the time.
Definitely. I want to just touch on this because I have 2 young boys. I have 3 boys here at home with me, but 2 of them are young, 9 and 10. And when we sit down, my wife and I, to actually help them with their schoolwork, and it's funny because my son's watching a video on the brain. Yesterday it was the spine and the body and bones, and today it was the brain and what part of the brain does what. And so I'll watch these little videos with him, and because he has to write out his answers, and I'm helping him formulate his sentences, and I'm sitting there going, you know what, it's interesting, by the way, because all the stuff he's learning in history, I'm sitting here and I'm learning this stuff, and I'm not learning it, but I'm going through it with him and then able to tell him what I know about it. And I'm thinking, you know what, I'm glad I have this moment where he had to do a report on the War of the Worlds, the Orson Welles things, and what an interesting thing for them to actually pick out as an assignment during this time. But I got to actually sit down and talk to my son about what I knew about that. And I just thought, we played Pictionary the other day, and win, lose, or draw, and charades. And I'm telling you, Pictionary and charades are highly, highly underrated games. We have so much fun playing them. And I'm thinking, I wouldn't even be here right now. I'd be, I wouldn't have this quality time with him right now. I should say it that way. And we're valuing that. So I think you're right. And maybe this is just a way of us being forced to slow down, because somebody said this the other day. before you rush back to your normal life, now's a great time to sit back and determine what's worth rushing back to. I thought pretty powerful.
No, that is powerful. I think we were talking, a bunch of us from the fire engineering community were texting recently. Frank actually kind of kicked it off. There's about a dozen of us who have been talking, going back and forth, sharing, friends, family that are sick, and so forth. And we've all been kind of sharing little bits and pieces of wisdom. You're already seeing people helping people. Community members are helping community members. Neighbors are helping neighbors. It's not just in the hospitals. It's really in the neighbor to neighbor level. People are stepping up, whether it's helping an elderly person with their shopping list or whatever. One of the things that we talked about, I'm going to just read this. There's a lot of words of wisdom that went out. I want to share something that was said that I think applies to all of us as firefighters, and in this season we're in. The veneer of civilized society is and always has been thin and brittle. Our vulnerability is ever present, whether through cancer, heart disease, or a vehicle accident. We have all seen how precious, fragile, and temporary our lives are. We have been on the front lines of the human existence and tragedy for our entire adult lives. The only difference is now, as in the days after 9/11 or Pearl Harbor, the rest of the world has had a glimpse behind the curtain of security and safety that is nothing more than smoke and fog that can be whisked away with a breeze, only to reveal our precious position that was present all along. Now is the time for those of us who have lived on the fringe, with 1 foot in reality and 1 foot in society, 1 foot in reality, 1 foot in society, to set the example. We will be steadfast. We will be calm. We will have the resolve of knowing that God is still in control, that our blessings are ever more illuminated in darkness. And that's something I think that we as firefighters have an opportunity to remember in this season, is that the rest of the world is now experiencing what we do on a 24-hour basis, and this is our opportunity in our communities, in our families, with our crews, with our neighbors, with our extended family. A lot of them are asking, how are you handling this? How are the crews that are working handling this? And it's not so much they're asking, how are you running calls and what is your body substance isolation and PPE practices? They just want to know, how are we coping with it as an industry? And I just tell them, you know what, firefighters are like cockroaches. After a nuclear holocaust, the cockroaches and the firefighters will still be around. And that's how we are. We sustain, but this is a time for us to be beacons of light. It's a time to help ourselves and those around us count our blessings that we take for granted, because so many around us are not being or in such terrible times and perilous times, and we have to remember that. So what I'd like to do is kind of transition into talking about command. And Frank and I were discussing this earlier today in our preparation time. And building off the Nash 5 a little bit, one of the things that I think is critical to Fireground Command is understanding why it is so different than anything else on the Fireground. Fireground Command, whether it's the action of command, whether it's training and preparing for command, whether it's promotion, anything surrounding Fireground Command is different than just about anything else we do, whether it's throwing ladders or fire attack or rescue, or anything. You could say search and rescue, or you can say technical rescue or urban search and rescue, and you can say hazmat, and you can say EMS, and people just know what that's all about. When you say command, people get weird. When you say command or incident command, I think that you start dealing with things that aren't as prevalent in other components of what we do. And the biggest thing, I think, is that there are so many ways to do it, so many opinions on it. Now, obviously, there's opinions on everything in the fire service. Nobody's short on opinions. But a certification in incident command, even if it's a formalized certification by your agency or by the state, it's different for everybody because you don't always have the same staffing levels. You don't always have the same response levels. You don't always have the same types of structures, equipment, SOGs. There's just so many variables when it comes to command. And the other thing is anybody who's in the seat of command is got a little more seniority, whether they're a chief officer or a seasoned company officer. And what I have found in my travels is that it's almost people take it really personal if they get the feeling that you're telling them how they run a fire isn't okay, and they get really pissy about it. They get really their hackles go up. And I find that isn't it interesting that the function on the fire ground that is probably has the potential to hurt the most people is the least regulated in the nation. It's the least regulated. It's the least certified. It's the least, paramedics have to go through 500 some hours of didactic classroom time. They have to go through another 500 hours of clinical time at the hospital. And then they have to culminate another 500 hours of an internship with a preceptor who's riding along right with them, watching everything they do, and they're not able to start an IV until they've done it in the lab and until they've got a preceptor who thinks they can do it in the field. And they wean themselves off of that preceptor, and then they go out into the field as paramedics, and they have a license, and they have very specific protocols and a license that can be revoked by the state. And they can only kill, here's the key, and I've said it before, paramedics can only kill one person at a time. I've done the math. I did it my own little UL-NIST study in my office. And it turns out paramedics can only kill one person at a time, called the patient. Yet a lieutenant or a company officer, captain, can kill 2 or 3 members, and an incident commander can kill a dozen. And so there's this paradox where the training and the standards for command are all over the map, and the accountability, the continuing education, CEs are non-existent practically, and yet it's the most critical position on the fire ground. And I feel that a lot of that's ego-driven. A lot of it is bad habits are developed in the incipient phases of a chief officer's career. Frank and I were talking today that neither one of us, when we were battalion chiefs, had drivers. Most departments, the chief officer coming to the scene, the battalion chief most likely does not have a driver in most systems. And so they're dealing with code 3 driving and trying to manage getting to a call and understand what's happening and where everyone is as they pull up and assume command of an incident. And when you are our Lone Ranger and you spent the better part of your career with other nitwits in the vehicle with you, like your driver or your firefighters, and you kind of operate as a team, and then you're thrust into this Lone Ranger position where you're having to drive code 3, talk on multiple radios, find your way to the fire, deal with the mobile data, system, and GPS and all that, and you come in and you probably haven't been trained adequately for this job, and you're lucky you got there, and or maybe you didn't even have your seatbelt on while you were driving and busting through all the red lights and busting through all the DMV codes, and you show up at a fire behind the curve, and you have to, out of necessity, build bad habits. You just do. You build bad habits unless you've had good training, unless you're part of a robust system that supports the training and does it one way. And what I've found around the nation, I'm sure Frank could attest to this, is that everybody does it differently. Everybody does it differently. Even departments that are right next to each other do it differently. Even departments that run fires with each other do it differently.
Yes.
And that is just not okay. And so that's kind of what we want to talk about tonight. I want to let Frank take it and let you guys jump in anytime. But I want to just kick it off with that in mind.
Yeah, I'll tell you, you said so much in that. And when you're talking about whether or not somebody was trained properly for command, this is what I've found, many organizations don't have a system in place to train you properly. So if you were trained properly, it's for one of 2 reasons. One, you had a great mentor who really worked hard to help you understand command, or you're just an extremely ambitious person and you went out and took the classes and went to the conferences and read the books and practiced things. You know, I actually, Anthony, I never told you this, but I created probably about 50 different operational guides, I call them. I actually co-authored a book with Mike Turpak called Fireground Operational Guides, but that book came from operational guides that I was writing for myself to help me through a scene, because not only did I not have a driver, if a call happens on a weekend or at 3 o'clock in the morning, I don't even have a battalion chief with me. You know, what I'm having is 4 engines and a ladder company and myself as the deputy and the incident commander. And if I'm going to get any other chief officer out there, maybe somebody's going to come in and get called in on overtime. But if I call second alarm, I'm getting somebody from another town to come over. And that person doesn't know my system. I don't know that person's system. We operate differently, and you know, maybe it's not even going to. We're not going to have that good chemistry because of that. So, for me personally, it came down to self-education, reading and watching and learning everything that I could, so I could figure out how to run a fire scene. And what I will tell you is this, because you said a key thing. You talked about behind the curve. Well, you know, when you operate on a fire ground, it's a very stressful place. And because now it's not, like you just said, you said so much with that whole dialogue about the paramedic, and I've never felt stress as a firefighter like I felt as an incident commander. And it wasn't stress that I couldn't handle. It was stress of me saying, wow, these decisions I'm making right now are extremely important. And guess what? I'm making a decision on a fire ground in something that in 20 years I've not even seen as a firefighter or a company officer. First time I'm seeing it is as an incident commander, and I have to make decisions on that. So I've been there, and when the mind hits that kind of pressure, it doesn't function properly or freely like it would in a conversation like we're having right now, just talking about command. And in one of Malcolm Gladwell's books, he talked about this, and they did a study to see how the mind works under pressure. They wanted to see how soldiers in war, commanders, how they functioned with that kind of pressure. And they couldn't go on the battlefield, so what they ended up doing was they went into the trauma centers and hospitals and the fire ground. And that's where they did the study. And what they found is to be effective, you need one of two things. You need peer support, which we talked about earlier. And what I mean by peer support as an incident commander is other people at a command post. Or you need a memory support tool. And so that was one of the crutches that I relied on to help me get through incidents. And I mean anything. If I have a water main break, guess what? I'm pulling out the operational guide I drew up for water main breaks, and I'm pulling it out to make sure I cover all my bases. Why? Because what did I see? 4 water main breaks. I mean, real water main breaks, not ones where we got sinkholes and stuff. How many of them have I seen in my career? So I remember one time we had a bomb threat at a Walmart, and when I walked up to the police officer who was standing out front as the building was in the process of being evacuated, he walked up to me and said, "So what do we do?" I looked at him and I said, "I don't know. I'm just here if something goes boom." So I said, "Where are you in charge?" He goes, "Yeah." And he was a young guy, and he said, it's his first incident, didn't know what to do. And I remember thinking, well, I don't ever want to be in that situation again. So I actually developed this a tactical worksheet for bomb threats. Now, it's nothing you can't just find yourself, all this information. I'm researching stuff. We share information in the fire service. This is a beautiful thing. But I remember probably 5, 6 years later, we have another bomb threat at the same exact facility, and I pull up, I meet with my captain, I start handing him a sheet, another captain comes, I hand him a sheet, police officer walks up to me and says, "Can I get one of them?" I said, "Yeah." I hand him a sheet. And we went right down the steps and followed what needed to be done there. So for me, that helped. And on my just talk about a structure fire for a moment. For me, it's about, I think it was 11 categories, but 10 I focused on the most. which is quickly en route to the fire, what am I doing? Upon arrival, what am I doing? And these are things like, my gathering information while I'm en route to the fire, getting pre-planned information if I have it, getting my tactical worksheet, on arrival, pulling up, positioning, doing a 360, giving my initial radio report, which is one of the things I had on my tactical worksheet, not to give the report, but make sure that there was certain information I relayed. But then it got to the important things: size up, resources, strategy and tactics, my incident command system, benchmarks, what to do when I call it under control, and how do I terminate command. And literally, I've created these sheets based on information I researched, so I had it memorized. But it still was something that I had to every now and then look down and say, oh, yeah, I haven't done this yet. So I just want to start by talking about the value of a tactical worksheet or an operational guide as a way to help you mitigate and get through an incident, because I've had great success with that. It's helped me tremendously. And not only even at the incident itself, but every now and then I'd pull them out and I'd review them, and I'd go through one in my mind. And this is something I've talked about in my classes recently and I'll after this, we'll open it up for questions or anybody else that wants to throw in their 2 cents on this. A couple years ago, my wife and I had started a travel baseball team for our 7-year-old and his friends, just to get him a little extra play after the season. But we found out you have to put so much work into just entering a tournament, uniforms, insurance, all this stuff. We just decided we're just going to start the team and go into 4 tournaments. So we enter the first tournament. I'm one of the coaches. These kids were so good at practice. They were so good that I knew we were going to be the team to beat. Mm-hmm. But in our first game, they lose by 10 runs in 4 innings. And it didn't take me long to realize why, Anthony. You know what happened? We played the same game as the other team. They just played it at a different speed. They played with urgency. They played with specific intent. They knew where they were going. The kids knew where they were going to put the ball. They ran with everything was different, the style of play. And I remember thinking, that's exactly what I focused on as a deputy chief when we were training, was trying to train the way we're going to play so when we show up at the scene, we can go on autopilot because muscle memory kicks in and it alleviates a lot of the stress that anybody at the incident would have because you've been there before. And I would take out my tactical worksheets and I would actually go through scenarios in my office, in my house, lying in bed sometimes. I'd go through a scenario and act like it's real and take myself through the first 15 minutes of a scenario. So when it happened, it wasn't the first time I was seeing it. And I hope that makes sense for some of the people that are listening to the call now or in the future, because I didn't have anybody to sit down and say, I'm going to show you how to do it. Nobody said, now you're sworn in, now we're going to train you. And that's even the worst way to do it. Nobody said, since you're going to be promoted, let's prepare you for that position before you get there. I didn't have that. So I think we need to start doing that if you're not doing that already. And I know a lot of organizations are. And I'm proud of anybody that's part of a system where they are doing it that way.
Well, I think that's why, Frank, you and I love what we do and we're doing so much of it is because so many departments don't have in-house organic leadership and officer development. And so, those of us who like to share, because we don't want to see other people make the same mistakes, we want to see other people gain from our occupational road rash. We want to see them. And that's truly what happened when we had a fire in 2005. I'd been 2004, 5, 6, whatever it was. I'd only been a battalion chief for a year, and we had a triple fatal apartment fire, and we lost a dad and his 2 kids, and that's what led to the Mastering Fireground Command Calm the Chaos curriculum and video series. But that was because we built a command training center to learn and to say, you know what, no more. We're not going to roll the dice anymore. We're going to have a way to do it that's consistent amongst all the shifts and battalions, and it's consistent for the up-and-coming officers as well as the incumbent officers, so everyone's on the same page. Because if there's one thing, I know you see it, Frank, that I'm sure our friends on the phone with us can attest, that everyone's got a different way of doing it. a different shift, a different battalion, an adjacent agency. Everyone does it a little different. And when you do things a little different in battle, that's bad. And so what you had mentioned, having tactical worksheets, which is a wonderful tool. And an excellent resource out there is Tablet Command. Everybody knows it by now, at least heard about. If they don't have Tablet Command, they should have heard about it by now, which is a really great program using your tablet to use those and input those tactical worksheets. So they're already loaded up. It interfaces with your dispatch center and the AVL and everything, and it works really well. What I like to do, and what my philosophy was as a battalion chief and what I teach around the nation is, and this is going to be in an article coming out for everybody listening, the April edition of Fire Engineering, I have an article in there called Command 2020, how to prepare for your next fire. And the idea is that you need to train on command, not just if you're the incident commander or battalion chief or incumbent or up-and-coming officer. Everybody, the whole battalion or agency needs to train on incident command so they understand how we communicate, how we account for people, how we assess risk, how we deploy resources, and how we organize this thing called a fire. And I'm talking about the probies all the way to the senior firefighters, all the way through to the incident commander and all the company officers. And everyone needs to participate in that so they're not learning on the fly on the fire. They're not learning, I guess we're calling it Division Alpha today, or I guess we're having a second floor fire. I guess we're using fire attack today. Well, yesterday it was Division 2 because I was on B shift. But no, it's different. Instead of it being different, and we learn in the laboratory, instead of the white mice being actual firefighters, the white mice are just us at a drill training where there's no risk. And what we talk about in this article, what our program teaches, is we've taken the video series that came out in 2011, Mastering Fireground Command, Calm the Chaos. That 3-part video is now a 5-day operational train the trainer workshop where we're building instructors around the country to actually perform incident command training. And one of the whole precept is that you have to train your lieutenants and captains. Your company officers have to learn how to be division and group supervisors if needed, because what that does is you mentioned I think Frank earlier that you may be on a fire and not have a second chief officer there for quite a while. And at that, it may be a neighboring agency. And so what we're teaching is, look, the company officers need to be able to step in any role. They may be task level stretching a hose as part of Engine 1 with their crew, and that's it. They may be tactical and in charge of a division or a group as Division 2 or Division A, or they may be the incident commander for a short period until the chief arrives. And they need to be able to vacillate and stratify all 3 levels and move back and forth as needed as the incident is needed, because you don't always know who's going to be first. You don't always know when the chief's coming. You don't always know what companies are coming in what order. And so our philosophy was that you build an incident management team comprised of all the officers on the alarm. So let's say you have 3 engines and 2 ladders going to a fire with a battalion chief, or maybe even two battalion chiefs. Well, those 2 battalion chiefs are not the command team. All the officers are the command team. And I don't mean that those officers, the company officers, standing back, not working and holding clipboards and vests and not working. Most of them are going to be, task level company officers working with their crews. But just pulling one company officer out to organize a division of where the majority of the work is, where the party is, if you will. That one division supervisor, be it a lieutenant or a captain, who's there before the second chief, that person can run that division and have eyes-on accountability, hands-on accountability, be looking at risk assessment, be looking at building, smoke, fire conditions, be anticipating and getting ahead of the incident, and giving the incident commander those much-needed eyes and ears, and do a 360 when appropriate, when possible. And if you need another one, as the chiefs arrive, you expand the incident. But just having the one company officer stand in that tactical gap is tremendous for doing what you talked about earlier, Frank, which is staying ahead of the power curve. And because once you're behind the curve, once you're behind and you lose track of resources, you're over your head. As an incident commander, there's too much radio traffic, you have too many people, and you don't know where they are. You cannot get that back. It's like a wave that's already crested. And this is a way to keep from that happening. So, again, what we're teaching is that all the officers need to be able to fill any role based on the needs of the incident and who's on scene. And so that decentralizes, like you said, having more instead of having more officers necessarily at the command post who are helping run the incident, the officers who are embedded in the incident are helping to run the incident. They're recognizing that, hey, I need to step back and be division right now. I'm going to go ahead. So, for example, I had a fire with a house, 2-story house, hoarder house. We arrived, we had one person still inside who refused to come out. Heavy smoke, a little bit of fire. They had a quick knockdown in the kitchen, but it was a hoarder house and the lady was upstairs, so it was potentially lethal fire. Well, it was nighttime, and I was behind some apparatus and some hedges, and I couldn't really see. And the incident, it wasn't a quick knockdown, and it certainly wasn't a quick search. So one of the captains radioed out and said, hey, command, this is Engine 103. Why don't I take Division Alpha for you? I'll be your division soup, and I'll manage all the resources inside the building. Perfect. Now, the radio traffic went down because he had eyes-on, hands-on accountability. People were talking more face-to-face, and he was my eyes and ears and my safety officer for the inside of that house. Then I could anticipate other companies coming in, what they were going to do. I could worry about support functions like RIC, like medical, calling additional resources if necessary, talking to dispatch, and because he bridged that tactical gap for me. And that was all done before the second chief ever arrived. And so that's kind of the model that we're teaching. I know, where you came from, Frank, in Jersey, you guys kind of in a similar fashion, you didn't have drivers as a chief, but how did you use your officers and how did you use the company officers, if at all, in those tactical positions?
Well, we have, there are some departments that did have drivers, like Jersey City, which is in our county as well. We didn't. But for us, it was really, it came down to, we would have crews show up, and obviously you have your first engine, your second engine company, and your first ladder company. They're all busy doing their things. We have one come in that's going to be our assigned rapid intervention team. They come relatively early. If I have a crew that I can somehow break up and use the officer as my safety officer and utilize a couple firefighters on that crew for different functions, I'll do that. But obviously it came down on smaller departments. It's not a very large department. It came down to many times when we have a working structure fire, everyone I have that's showing up is going to work. So a lot of that came down to I had to be really quick to call the second alarm. And that's really what it came down for me. Had to be very quick. Right. So if I'm driving down, and I've done this multiple times, I'm driving across town, I see that smoke, I know I have something. I'm calling the second alarm a minute before I actually pull up onto the scene. Now, some people might think, why would you do that? Well, here's why. Because I know every single unit I have is going to be hands-on. They're all going to be working. And I'll have nothing.
Yeah, it's all hands fire.
Yeah, I have nothing in reserve. And I remember Billo talking about a tactical reserve, 2 engines and a ladder.
Yeah.
So if I need them, they're there. Well, I had to call for them. So I'm going to call for them earlier. And if I show up and it's like, oh, we got this is a quick knockdown, we're going to turn them around. And chances are they didn't even get out of the fire station. We're only talking about 1 minute. But that minute meant something to me. So I didn't have that. I love what you're saying. I love what there's so many things that when I hear you talk about command that I wish we had in place or could put in place. I remember you and I had a conversation years ago, and you talked about how you take command from your car. It eliminates distractions. Windows up, radio's on. You're making. I can't do that. The main reason I can't do that, first of all, it was frowned upon. Here to do something like that. But the main reason I couldn't do it, our streets are tight, our homes are so close together. Chances are I'm not getting a good view of that structure. I need to be standing right in front of that, and that's where I prefer to stand. The problem is when you're standing right in front of the structure, you're also listening to 3 apparatuses, 2 of them that are in pump gear, You're listening to that aerial ladder going
Saws,
up. You're listening, all the chaos
thing.
around you. Yeah.
Yep.
And you miss transitions. We have, you can go on YouTube and listen to throughout the country, of maybe a mayday that was not acknowledged. And
right.
It's easy to hear it when you're sitting in your living room or you're sitting in your office or you're playing it on your phone in your car going, wow, how did they not acknowledge that mayday? I'm going to tell you exactly how they didn't acknowledge that mayday, because at that exact time there's a good chance two people were talking to the incident commander, and he didn't hear it.
Exactly.
Or she didn't hear it, because that's what happened to me. Not with a mayday, but with transmissions. But I tell you what I did do is, because one of the things that I got wise to really quick was to meet with my dispatchers before shifts and have conversations with them and say, listen, because a lot of our dispatchers were retired firefighters and many of them officers. And you know what it's like to be at a fire scene. You know the chaos. You know the sounds. You know everything. If there's a transmission that I don't acknowledge immediately, make me aware of it. And there was another thing I used to tell them. If I know I have a big job and I know I'm going to need my resources, that I knew that I was going to call, under my list on my resources, I'd give them my list. It's additional alarms, second, third, fourth alarm. It's a rapid intervention crew, utility company, law enforcement, EMS, safety officer, water supply officer, accountability officer, rehab. That's what I was going to call for if I had a second alarm or greater, right? There would be times when I would say to my dispatcher, call my resources. Because they knew exactly what it was. Because I had a conversation with them 6 hours earlier and said, here's my list of resources. But now this comes with one of these things of like, listen, if you are coaching third base on a baseball team and your batter goes in there and you want to call for a bunt, here's the worst thing that can happen. You're giving them the bunt sign, but you never told them what the bunt sign was. So what I'm doing is I'm telling my dispatcher, here's my bunt sign. Here's my pitcher. Here's my sign for the pitcher to throw it high. So that's one of the things that I think is important, that we understand. You talked about this. You want people to be able to run and understand each aspect of command. Include the dispatchers too.
Absolutely.
Include the dispatchers too, because they're your ears more so than you're ever going to know.
Yeah, one of the things I love to do with the dispatchers is I take them a 2-pound box of See's candy, at Christmas time or every couple times a year, go visit. I take my crews down there so they could see how inundated the dispatchers were. But the whole notion of company officers having to fill that gap, and it's not really filling the gap, it's bridging the gap between the incident commander working at the command post and the crews inside the building. You have to have that one person who bridges that gap. And if the incident's larger, you might have 2 or 3. You might have Division Alpha, Division Charlie, Roof Division, but at least one to start. And that person is gathering intel on behalf of the incident commander. That they're not standing outside with a clipboard and a vest eating a hoagie. They're in full PPE. They're going in and out. They're touching base with crews. Let's just go through a script. Let's say Engine 1 shows up, and he's got a working bedroom fire, and maybe getting into the attic space. And he decides, I want to attack this fire with my crew. We've got a water supply, and we're going to go and attack this thing. Well, he would establish command, but he's in a working command situation where he's doing work.
Right. Yes.
He's in command while he's stretching hose, while he's getting a lap, while he's masking up as the second company's arriving. But he has passed command the moment the second officer arrives. Let's say it's Engine 2. That company officer assumes command from the first one, and that company officer supports the first guy if he needs help with finishing the water supply, if he needs a 2 outline, if they need help with forcible entry, if they need another lap of the structure, whatever is to get those 2 companies getting that one line stretch and supported properly with 2 out water supply and a good supportive incident command position. What I would do is I'd come in as the chief, and whoever was in command of that fire, whether he had 2 or 3 companies on scene or just one, when I arrived on scene, Engine 2, I would assume command from Engine 2 And 9 times out of 10, unless the fire was already knocked down, unless the fire was incipient, unless we were going to cancel the balance of the alarm, if it was still a working incident, yeah, it was not a face-to-face. That if this is still a working incident, that Engine 2 captain or lieutenant that was in command just became a division supervisor. And they are now bridging the tactical gap between me and that company inside. They're doing that lap. They're orbiting. And I say in our classes they have to be highly hostile, highly agile, and highly mobile. They have to be hostile, meaning they have to have strong command presence. They have to own their space. Everyone needs to know they're working for him or her, not reporting to me. They have to be agile and thinking in the next, thinking ahead of the incident, thinking about potential collapse issues, smoke issues, fire extension, victim profiling, additional resource needs, rotation of crews, accountability, and they have to be highly mobile. They can't just sit out front in a lounge chair. They have to be in and out and around their tactical space, whether it's the first floor, second floor, the whole house, the alpha side of a commercial, whatever it is. And they have to be talking to their crews face to face and putting together that tactical plan and holding together the accountability for that space. And so as additional companies would come in, say that the first ladder comes in and goes to search and the third engine comes in with a second hose line, they're all working for that division supervisor, not for me, which cuts down the radio traffic, which keeps the NIOSH 5 from coming into alignment, bottom line. That's what it comes down to. He or she, that tactical division or group supervisor, has the accountability, the risk assessment, taking care of good face-to-face communications, keeping the span of control at a minimum. They're also the safety officer of that area. They're anticipating the needs of crew rotation, additional hose lines, and they're really looking at it from a view that I can't possibly see. So to your point, Frank, you mentioned in back east the streets are narrow, right? So you had to get out to get eyes on it. We didn't where I worked, the streets weren't narrow, but I was oftentimes blocked by apparatus or smoke, trees, nighttime, buildings, whatever. And I oftentimes would rely on my division supervisor to give me those updates. And when needed, I would position to see the building, but sometimes I couldn't. And this is where our friend Anthony Avilo gives me a bad time. He goes, you command from the car. You command from the car. You got to get in front of the building. Why do you command from the car? And he would say, at FDIC, he always says, why don't you teach from the lobby? Since you command from the car, you should teach your class from the lobby, not the classroom. He's such a jerk. But anyway, but what I found is that this was a phenomenal way, not only for that incident, but it built officers who had tactical confidence. They wanted to be tactical supervisors. They wanted to run the incident. They wanted to their command presence developed as they grew. Their ability to run the incident themselves and be incident commanders if I was delayed grew. They had better succession planning and promoted. And it was really a team concept when we arrived on scene, as we arrived on scene. And that's what we're teaching in our class. So as we go around the country doing the train the trainer, we're really teaching people how to be a tactical supervisor and how the incident commander can use them to impact the NIOSH 5. And so that's really, for a lot of people, a different way of doing it. But it's still just ICS. It's nothing new, but it's employed on everything. And I'm not talking about, food on the stove, but, hey, house fires are where most of us get hurt and killed. It's where most civilians get hurt and killed, and that's what we do the most. We need to get good at it on those. And so,
train when you see the moment.
that was exactly. So, guys, Scott, Jason, and Paul, any comments on what we're talking about? I know you get the two, like I said, you get Frank and me going. We're going to talk all day and take all the air out of the room. So any thoughts on what we've been talking about from any of you guys? Scott?
Yeah, sorry for yelling there. One of the things that Frank said early on in the conversation was, and I thought it was, I apologize, I thought it was in NIOSH 5, maybe I'm wrong, but complacency is a thing that injures firefighters. And, to kind of maybe bring the conversations full circle, back to the dreaded C word of 2020, we spend a lot of time focusing on what's going on right now. I would say it's a large majority of our day. Fortunately, a couple of our shifts we've had, unfortunately for our citizens, have had a couple of fires to keep those KSAs sharp. You know, but it's a challenge in this world right now. You know, I mean, we're supposed to, you know, not go and visit other companies and drill with them. You know, we're trying to stay away from that. We're really, you know, just the three of us here at the station. We're having to just drill just the three of us versus getting all of that knowledge into one parking lot or, you know, what have you, and get to share different points of view. So it's very important to keep doing the things that we have to do. You know, the training, you know, we've got a probationary firefighter. We're working with him. We're trying to make sure that we're giving him all the knowledge that we can before we lose him here in a month to another station. But, you know, again, that's the challenge that we have in our society right now. You know, you know, and it's not a trying to become complacent. It's just we're so focused on something else that, you know, we've been doing, you know, blue card scenarios via the telephone, via our radio tax, you know, to make sure we're staying sharp on those once a set with all of our companies. But it's trying to find new and different ways to stay on top of our game, so we don't get, you know, just sucked away from all the other stuff that we have to be good at.
Yeah,
that's a real good point, brother.
It is a very good point, and it just goes back to what we were talking about earlier. You know, we have to be on our toes for anything that can happen, and all of a sudden you have, you know, one of the biggest challenges we've seen in our careers, if not the biggest, and it is the biggest for the majority of us, the biggest challenge with this COVID-19. And all of a sudden, the furthest thing from your mind is, well, we need to be prepared for a structure fire. You know, because you're thinking, I'm answering calls every single day, multiple calls, and so concerned about that. And it's easy. And you mentioned something earlier. You just talked about a probationary firefighter. I saw somebody post the other day. They just, I think it was yesterday or today, a group of firefighters just graduated from the academy. Their last day was yesterday or today. I'm thinking, man, what a time to come in, you know, because they're coming in right into this whirlwind, and they have to try to figure out, well, like, what's going on. And you know what? It's a interesting time. I don't know what's going to come out of it. I don't know what kind of, I guess, behavioral changes we're going to see from this. But I know that it's an awakening, it's an awareness, and I believe wholeheartedly we're going to be okay. You know, I believe that wholeheartedly. And Anthony, you alluded to that earlier too. You know, because this is what we're resilient,
I believe
a resilient profession.
Yeah, we have to just dig in and be strong and steadfast to our faith if we have it, and to our families. And you know, you had mentioned, Scott, some online training and stuff, and it's a kind of a good segue to kind of start to wind this up. But we're putting out some online training here at trainedfirefighters.com. We're going to be launching an online version of our assessment center workshop. Most of you have either taken or know of our assessment center book, Mastering the Fire Service Assessment Center from Fire Engineering, and our 4-day workshop that goes along with it. Well, we're going to be launching an online version of that workshop. Actually, that was in the works before COVID-19 ever came. That'll be coming soon, the next month or two, so look for that. I want to thank everybody for participating tonight, Scott, Jason, Paul, and Frank. And I want to thank everybody that's out there listening live, and those of you who are going to listen in the future. We are going to get past this. Keep doing what you're doing. Stay strong. Stay faithful. And thank you all. If you have any information you'd like from us on training, whether it's virtual or in the future later in the year, you can reach me at trainedfirefighters.com. And Frank, let them know your website. Frank, you there? Did I lose Frank?
You know what? I had it on mute, and here I am talking to explain. Yeah, it's easy. It's my name is my website, Frank Viscuso, VISCUSO.com. And obviously, I'm very easy to find on social media. Step up and lead. I send out this message every 3 or 4 days. I think I'm going to do it right now, just saying, just asking a question, how are you all making out? And, last time I did that, we had about 112 comments underneath of people throughout the country talking about how they feel about what's going on. And so some people are opening up about, hey, we're strong, we're solid, we're good. And some people are saying, I'm not really doing too good right now. And I've randomly called some of those people and had conversations, and we'd start, conversing back and forth. But overwhelming number of responses make me feel really good about the state that our firefighters are in right now, and knowing that they got a challenge ahead of them, but who's better to answer the challenge? As far as where I'm going to be next, well, I was supposed to be keynoting at FDIC in a couple of weeks, but that's not happening. So I don't know where I'll be next because I'm not sure. I know I'm supposed to be in Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina next week, and North Dakota and Wisconsin. Next month, North Dakota, Wisconsin, and but I don't know if any of that's going to happen next month. But if it doesn't, I'll be back out there soon. You know what, Anthony? Here's another thing. I will say this real quick. One of the things that I learned about, and I knew this about me, but I really understand it now, is I truly know I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing with my life, because I can't wait to get back out there and spend time with the firefighters and talk to them about some of the things I've learned and the mistakes I made, and the successes that I've been able to find my way through to help them do the same. And I'm passionate about it. I just can't wait to get back out there.
Amen to that, brother. Amen to that. And it is a blessing to teach, to do what we do in the greatest profession in the world. And like you, we had to cancel workshops throughout California, Chicago. I think maybe even we've got some coming up in Georgia, obviously, Indianapolis, FDIC. Hopefully we'll still be able to do them in Georgia and California, the other ones, and bolt them together in Texas and other parts unknown. But in the meantime, everybody, if you need to reach us, you know how to get a hold of us, frankviscuso.com or trainfirefighters.com. If you want more information on the online training that we're going to be putting together for assessment centers and officer development, email us at info@trainfirefighters.com. And also, if you want any more information on mastering fireground command, calm the chaos, train the trainer. We've got workshops scheduled in the fall. Hoping they'll still happen. God bless everybody. God bless you. God bless the American Fire Service. Take care, everybody, and stay safe. Thank you.
Take care, guys. Thanks for listening in.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Steve.
You're welcome.
9-5, engine 101. Truck 106, 97.